The state of branding and communications in private equity has changed considerably since the industry's early days. In 2004, I took my first job out of college at Platinum Equity in Los Angeles as an assistant to the CEO and founder. As I started learning about the private equity space, I became aware of Platinum's competitive set and other peers, and I was amused at the number of firms named after Greek and Roman deities and mythology. I studied quite a bit of the classics in high school and college, and so I had some inherent understanding of the identities of these grand-sounding but otherwise nondescript names. Apollo, god of prophecy, the arts, and the sun. Pomona, goddess of abundance and plenty, also the university that I went to. Odyssey, the magnum opus of Homer, synonymous with journey. Ares, the god of war, who, according to Wikipedia, quote, personifies brutality and bloodlust, so we're getting into some more tonally ambiguous territory here. And my favorite of all, Cerberus. Cerberus, the hound of Hades, was for the Romans the three-headed dog guarding the gates of hell. What an odd and intimidating choice of brand name for an investment firm. By 2007, during Cerberus's high-profile acquisition of Chrysler, co-founder Steve Feinberg addressed the firm's name, saying that it seemed like an engaging name at the time, but that it was a big mistake that we are now stuck with. I tell you all this to illustrate that what constitutes good branding, or even reasonable branding, in private equity has come a long way, from the 1990s to 2007, and from 2007 to today. I'm Charlie Ittner, the founder and president of Darien Group, a branding and communications agency created for clients in the investment management space, and I've been working in private equity marketing and communications roles for over 20 years. I founded Darien Group in 2015 to fill the middle of the Venn diagram between great creative services and true fluency in the investment management industry. We're here today to talk about brand in private equity. How do we define it, and how do we measure its impact? Branding is a pretty soft science for the world of private equity, in which people tend to be more comfortable with the quantitative than the qualitative. One more note from my days at Platinum. By 2008, I was managing the firm's marketing function, which was largely a heavy outbound promotional program in service of sourcing transaction opportunities. You may need reminding that 2008 was so long ago that physical direct mail was still a key channel. Platinum invested heavily in beautiful, well-written, professionally printed mailers that went out several times per quarter to a distribution list in the tens of thousands. I was responsible for this work stream. It was a large effort, and it was not cheap. Thinking myself quite clever and probably trying to avoid some of the work involved in these projects, I suggested to Platinum's founder, Tom Goris, that we get modern, move past the physical mailer, go digital, email only. After all, these pieces were so expensive. I'll never forget his response. Charlie, he said, we're in a high-margin business. If we get one deal from these mailers, it justifies 20 years of doing them. Tom was right. Private equity is a high-margin business. The right limited partner can anchor a key fundraise, transforming a firm's development arc. The right acquisition can compose a huge percentage of a fund's performance. The right hire can be a star dealmaker or capital raiser or operator, adding value far beyond their compensation. Single individual decisions make huge impacts, and yet the industry as a whole has been very, very late in leveraging the power of branding and digital marketing, critical capabilities for nearly every other business model on the planet, to influence these crucial individual outcomes. When I started Darien Group almost 10 years ago, it was difficult to convince most prospective clients of the value of a website beyond providing contact information. Today, investment managers, particularly large ones, are catching up with the times. Blackstone is Exhibit A. Have a look at their website, LinkedIn, or YouTube channel, and consider the amount of time that CEO John Gray spends in front of a camera to evaluate how valuable they view branded communications as being. He's not doing all this just for fun. But for the industry in aggregate, there's still a long way to go, both in terms of adoption and in terms of strong execution. We've hit obliquely on brand via the examples of Cerberus, Platinum, and Blackstone. How do we define brand in private equity more directly? A website, a pitch book, a series of media appearances, gossip at super return? None of these things represents the totality of a firm's brand. In need of a definition for the sake of this video, I wrote the following. The brand of a private equity firm is the sum total of all interactions with and perceptions of that firm, its people, and its presence by all the different constituents within that firm's ecosystem. Of course, now we have to define the terms used within this definition to make sure we're all in the same zip code. Interactions. These can be in person, such as an investment professional meeting with a prospective asset seller or management team member, or asynchronous, an LP reading a year-in review piece distributed by a GP in whose funds they're invested. Defined as such, even a smaller firm with 10 full-time employees generates thousands of interactions in a given year. Perceptions. I don't need to define the word perception for you, but I do want to state what is perhaps obvious. Interactions influence perceptions. In the prior examples, was the investment professional collegial or dispassionate in the meeting with the seller? Did he or she appear warmly engaging or sharply analytical? And which was appropriate for that person? The year in review piece, was it memorable, interesting, and digestible, or forgettable, dense, and generic? Whether live or not, each interaction has some emotional component. Investment management is, after all, primarily a business made up of people, and we are emotional animals. Constituents. Today's private equity firm has a diverse set of constituents with whom it must interact, and whose perceptions of the firm will directly impact its ability to succeed. We have first-order audiences, limited partners, asset sellers, management teams, intermediaries, and prospective and current employees. But there are also second-order audiences that may not be as front of mind. Imagine your firm is making an acquisition within a niche that is new for you within an industry you're already familiar with. This target company's competitors and customers and other stakeholders are all of a sudden relevant to your firm and you to them. Or what if a firm is looking at new sources of investor capital, such as the wealth management channel? Now you have a whole host of new constituents, each with their own framework for getting to know you. Ecosystem. No two private equity firms have identical ecosystems. The set of LPs, intermediaries, sellers, markets, and geographies that matter to you is unique. Your team works very hard to give you the best possible position within that ecosystem to the benefit of your investors and your firm's potential. To restate that definition again, the brand of a private equity firm is the sum total of all interactions with and perceptions of that firm and its people and its presence by all the different constituents within that firm's ecosystem. I hope that at this point I've essentially demonstrated that your firm's brand is composed of thousands of events and instances. This large quantity of instances means that your brand has a certain degree of inertia. And with so many people and impressions involved, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to move. I want to give you 3 common scenarios to make this assertion more tangible. Many private equity firms from the 90s and 2000s were full of hard-charging, aggressive executives, and thus developed reputations for being tough or sharky. Distancing a firm from such a reputation is very difficult. It takes years to revise one's market perception, and even then, you need a new thing to be remembered for if there's anything negative to distance yourself from. Michael Milken needed to become quite the philanthropist in order no longer to be primarily the insider trading guy from the 80s. Here's the second. The amount of middle market private equity firms that have repositioned over the past decade plus from generalist or industry agnostic to industry specialist is vast, and anyone involved in those repositionings knows how glacial the pace can be. Often 1 to 3 full fund cycles for the LP universe to truly absorb this redefinition. A third hypothetical. Say you're a New York-based firm with investment bank heritage having trouble appealing to middle American founder sellers. You can't very well turn over your entire investment team or move your headquarters to Des Moines, Iowa in order to better appeal to these people. And yet you do perhaps have highly relevant capital and strategic resources that can benefit them. The very founder sellers whose built-in impression of you is negative because they're uncomfortable with what they perceive as the slickness and sophistication of Park Avenue. How do you overcome that seeming mismatch? Within this sea of interactions and impressions and perceptions, I submit to you that your digital presence, your marketing materials, and your communications program are the lowest investment and highest impact means of ameliorating your firm's brand or moving its position from where it is today to where you want it to be. Imagine your brand as a container of liquid, that liquid made up of the sea of interactions and impressions and perceptions we've been discussing. Just a few drops of something truly potent can dramatically change its color. I'm hoping that at this point I've opened up the possibilities of the business impacts that branding activities can have. Now I want to talk about the potential scale of this impact. You've made it this far into my spiel. I'm guessing you work at or are starting an investment management firm. I'm also guessing you have no idea what your firm's website traffic numbers look like, or those of your peers. Here are the last 12 months visitor counts for the top 10 private equity firms from the PEI 300 list. Total visits, and then unique visitors. The second number takes out the repeat visitor numbers. Probably greater than you thought. Thoma Bravo, an outlier to the low side, still saw 250,000 individuals visit its site over the past year. Now you might say, well, we're middle market or lower middle market, or we're newer, we're in a different asset class, so those numbers aren't relevant. Fine. To make this a little bit more relevant, we looked at the bottom half of the PEI 300. We removed venture firms who tend to have heavier site traffic, as well as Asia-Pacific firms who have lower traffic numbers, and we ran the numbers. Total average visitors over 75,000 and average uniques over 50,000. So this is a lot. It takes 0.05 seconds for a user to form an impression of a website. What type of impression are you generating through this valuable interaction between constituent and website? How would you grade that impression? That value is going to vary from firm to firm. But whatever it is, and for better or worse, it's getting replicated tens of thousands of times annually. Let's look at another medium, the trusty investor presentation. Think about the number of eyeballs that document gets over the course of a fundraise. It's not just the hundreds of meetings for which you're present in the room. For every representative that you meet from an institutional LP, there are 1 or 2 or 10 of their colleagues whose first impression is not you, but your materials as they are circulated among committees later. How many people total interact with your book during a fundraise? With fundraise cycles lengthening over the last few years, probably more than they used to. What's the value of a more persuasive and engaging document across 1,000 impressions? 3,000? 5,000? A senior executive at a well-known investment consultant told me recently regarding her evaluation of incoming pitch books, I just read the first few pages and see whether I want to know more. Sounds kind of like the 0.05 seconds that your website has to land with a visitor. Are you demonstrating differentiation with your book, or are you going into a pile of fungible alternatives? Websites and investor presentations are just 2 relevant mediums to consider among many communications vehicles that can affect the way your firm's brand is perceived in its ecosystem. You can extend this theme across your entire communications program and its effect, or lack thereof, on each of your audiences. But hopefully within this context, they are good illustrations of the sheer quantity of impressions you make with a single branding and communications production. To bring this home, I want to take the quantification effort one step further. What percentage effect could you have on the sum total of perceptions of your firm within its ecosystem through investment in your brand? Think about the aspects of your brand here that you can control directly. Your website, your social media presence, your investor materials during a fundraise, your investor communications outside of a fundraise, any seller-facing materials, content marketing such as video, the production of your AGM, the material you deliver there, your presence at relevant conferences and events, etc., etc., etc. Let's put all your constituents into a basket, every single one of them. We have a 20-year employee, and then one who just started last week. There's a banker you've done 5 deals with. Here's an LP who knows your firm's name and industry focus, but not much else about you. What about a founder seller who's been given a list of private equity firms to consider selling to? She's never heard of any of them, and is somewhat dubious of the whole concept. Point being, it's a diverse group in terms of their foreknowledge of you and their initiation into your brand to date. Now, how much in aggregate could we impact their perception of who you are, what you do, and how you create value? Of what you're like to work with? Of how trustworthy, stable, outperforming, or forward-thinking your team is? What is the average percentage change that we could impact across that whole ecosystem through branded communications? Well, person by person, it's going to depend on their individual situation. For some, the answer is 0. The super experienced investment banker who knows every sponsor on the street maybe doesn't care a whole lot about your new website. But a recently hired employee is a little more impressionable. Maybe he feels a sense of pride regarding the new brand and website that really nail the reasons he joined your firm in the first place. And then some folks are on the other end of the spectrum. The founder seller mentioned earlier. She's skeptical of private equity. She's read bad things in the press. She doesn't know one firm from another. They all end in capital or partners or capital partners. She's hired a bank to help with the process, and they've given her some guidance, but she needs to narrow down the list, or at least wants to do research before her first meetings. Could a website that strikes the right tone for her particular needs affect her ingoing attitude by 5%, 15%, 25%? Could the wrong website get you excluded from her list? Could the right website get you added? What about an LP that's invested in your last 2 funds but hasn't heard from you as regularly during a less newsworthy interval? That LP invests across a dozen private equity funds. They'll all be coming back to market in the next 24 months. Could you give yourself an advantage by proactively communicating with them more frequently? Say, offering them a portfolio newsletter to give them a little bit more personal connection to the fund's portfolios. What would each percentage point in difference of opinion or perception be worth in this case? Let's go back to the line from my old boss. We're in a high-margin business. You're influencing thousands of perceptions with your materials and tens of thousands with your digital presence. You don't need to impact hundreds of decisions to make investment in your brand profitable. You may only need to impact one. One last proof point, this one from my time leading Darien Group. One of our longest tenured clients, a sector specialist sponsor with a strong ESG focus, has been publishing lengthy best-in-class sustainability reports for about 7 years now, ahead of the industry curve. Several years ago, that firm's head of investor relations told me that they'd secured a $50 million commitment to their fundraise that was, according to the committing LP, directly attributable to their sustainability report. It was gratifying for our firm to play a role in that document, and to hear that our work had had some contribution toward this business outcome. That's really a critical part of our mission. Now, the rarity of this direct story underscores a critical point. 99% of the impressions made or reactions provoked by your brand and materials will never be explicitly mentioned or acknowledged, whether those impressions are positive or negative. Someone might tell you they like your new office. They'll never tell you they hate it. I'd wager that over half the time, the audiences themselves are not even aware of being influenced by a firm's branding efforts. You have perhaps seen enough of the show Mad Men to appreciate the degree of clever, subconscious cues that inform the advertising campaigns that most influence consumers. But the effect is real. This has been proven in B2C applications for decades, and more recently has been proven to be just as true in B2B purchase decisions. And I want you to consider once more. If your website reaches 50,000 people per year, what value do you place on each of those impressions? Or what if a better messaged and crafted set of fund marketing materials could reduce your time in market by a month or 2, allowing your firm to return focus from capital raising to core investment activities? What is the monetary value of that time? The absolute dollar value will differ from firm to firm. If you came to this video hoping I would conclude that the value of a good private equity brand is $1.35 million, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I sincerely hope that I have provided you with a framework to assess what brand value does, can, or should have for your firm and your efforts. As we wrap up this discussion, I want to leave you with one further statement. Branding in private equity is not simply about aesthetics or surface-level impressions. It's about creating lasting value for your firm and your stakeholders by creating lasting impressions throughout your ecosystem. This is what is called brand equity, a fitting term for our sector. The stories you tell, how your firm presents itself when its people are not in the room but its materials are, and the perceptions you cultivate can amplify your reach and your success. They matter, quantifiably so. In our next video, we'll look at how to build a great brand in private equity, most critically how to achieve in your materials differentiation, the holy grail for most of our clients. The Darien Group team and I hope that this video series and all our new content is helpful to you, our audience, our ecosystem. Until next time.